So hello and welcome to Ewe Sew You. My name's Zoe and this is my channel all about the crafty bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I spin on a drop spindle, I dabble in weaving from time to time, and anything else that takes my crafty fancy. So this week we are talking about a new scrap project I am starting, so that's English paper piecing. So grab a brew, put your feet up and let's get started. So welcome back to any returning viewers, and to any new viewers a very warm welcome to you. As I mentioned in the opening to this video, today I'm talking about a new scrap project that I'm starting using English paper piecing. So I'll talk a little bit about that technique for those of you that are maybe not too familiar with it. Although you might have seen some projects around and about the place using this technique. I know Vine has got into English paper piecing recently, and the Last Homely House does a lot of English paper piecing as well. So they're obviously good resources to have a little look and see what's out there. You can probably see behind me, this is my ready to be sewn pile, so that's where it's looking a little bit less aesthetic. Stuff I've cut out ready to go, but of course when you're cutting out projects for sewing, you do end up with little bits of fabric left over that you can't really use for many things. So the odds and ends of stuff. So I have a mixture of larger scrap pieces that are kind of big enough for project bags, that kind of thing, cushion covers and so on, and I have some that are maybe a bit weirder in shape or a bit smaller that are not so good for those bigger projects. English paper piecing is very, very good for those smaller scraps. I mean, you can use your bigger bits as well, and I will be using some bigger bits as well. But it's a nice hand sewing technique, so it's quite mindful. Just in what to do in front of the TV if you want to, so it's nice and relaxing, and you can be social at the same time. It's quite portable, depending on how you put your pieces together into the largest thing and how large your finished product is going to be. So it's a really nice traditional patchwork technique. So I've got all sorts of bits of fabric that are like this sort of shape, so weird shapes. I do have some larger pieces as well. I'm mostly using things left over from my handbag today, although there is some fabric left over from a shirt that I made a year or two ago during lockdown as well. In fact, a couple of years ago now, I think it was towards the beginning of lockdown. But I'm using cottons specifically for this project, and I would recommend, if you've never done English paper piecing before, that you work with cottons rather than your fancier, slippier fabrics. They're just a little bit easier to manage when you're dealing with small shapes. Once you're a bit more familiar with it, then absolutely do what you want, use whatever fabrics you like. My first piece of English paper piecing was about 20 plus years ago now. I haven't done a massive amount, but I have done a little bit. And the first piece was a cover for my footstool. It was one of those IKEA ones, and it was a bright orange cushion on it that matched the chairs that I had, and they were on sale, which is why I had the bright orange. So I covered them with offcuts from old jeans and some corduroy left over from a skirt that I made, and I did that all with English paper piecing. So they were quite large hexagons that I did. I do actually need to replace that cover I need to replace the footstool, but at least the cover if nothing else, because that is now showing its age. But yeah, it's all hand sewn, so it's nice and portable, and as I say, you can just do it quite comfortably in front of the TV. You don't have to worry about your machines and what have you. So what is English paper piecing? Well, it's a patchwork technique that uses paper to help you structure the shapes that you're going to use. So quite often you'll see it used with hexagons or pentagons, quite geometric shapes, that you then piece together to make a larger pattern or picture or what have you. You don't have to just use hexagons and pentagons, though. There are all sorts of other shapes out there that you can do. So I've got a few sandwich bags here with my templates in, because you do need paper templates to work with. So I've got hexagons in various sizes, and I'm keeping them in little sandwich bags by size, just to be organised. And yeah, so I've got all these different sizes of hexagons. I've downloaded mine as PDFs from the internet. I got mine from Gathered, which is an umbrella company that does a lot of knitting, crochet, cross-stitch, quilting, magazine type things, craft magazines. They all sort of club together for their web presence now from the same publisher. So Gathered is the website, and there's loads of free templates on there for English paper piecing and various other bits and pieces as well. So those are my hexagons. I do have a pentagon template and a kite and a diamond and that sort of stuff. But they're quite simple shapes as well, like the hexagons. So you could draw them out if you wanted to. The one that I really would recommend downloading rather than drawing out and replicating, I mean, it's easier anyway for accuracy to download them and print them, or if you've got a die cut, use that. But the one that I would definitely recommend using a die cut or a printed pattern from the internet rather than drawing it out by hand is this one. I have these clamshell shapes, again in various different sizes. So hopefully I'll show it that way around where you can see the printed edge. So they're curved, so trying to draw them out would be a bit of a pain in the bum. And again, I've got them in various different sizes. So they're not going to work together, the hexagons and the clamshells. You'd have to do one or the other, because the pieces are going to need to tile together to tessellate and fit closely together. Think like a tiled floor. It uses the same shape and everything matches up next to each other to create an overall pattern. So those are my templates I'm going to be using for this particular project. I'll either use the hexagons or the clamshells, or I might do one of each. Let me know down below which you think I should do for my scraps. Should I do hexagons or should I do the clamshells, or should I do one of each? I will demonstrate with one template or one shape during this video, but for my actual scrap project, which one do you want to see? Do you want to see the hexagons or the clamshells or both? Obviously it's not going to be finished today. The other thing that I downloaded from that Gathered website is following on from one of their issues. There was a pattern in Today's Quilter years ago called Kaleidoscope, which is this pattern. It's a free pattern, which is why I'm happy to show it to you. And included in with the templates for the pieces, they've got this design sheet for you to colour in and map out your project. So I am going to do this project at some point, but I'm not going to do this with my scraps. I've got all my templates ready. They're in this baggie here. So it's a Laura Pritchard design. I say it was in Today's Quilter, which you can find on Gathered. But I want to actually be quite thoughtful about what colours I put where and what patterns I put where. So I'm going to be buying some probably fat quarters, probably William Morris ones for that project at a later date. So that's going to sit and wait until I'm ready for it. So that's your templates. So for English paper piecing, you need your paper templates, you need your fabric, you need a pair of scissors, and you need a needle and thread. That's it. Some people glue baste their shapes together, which I don't do. There are a few videos around on the internet if you want to find out a bit more about glue basting. And the reason I don't do it is that my templates are made out of printer paper. So if I'm gluing fabric down around those templates, I run the risk of damaging my templates and then I can't use them again. So I stitch baste my templates down, which is the traditional way of doing it. Okay, so that's enough wittering on what English paper piecing actually is. So let's switch the camera around and we'll have a little look at how we get started. Okay, so we're going to start looking at the hexagon shape. And this is probably one of the most common, if not the most common, shape you're going to see in English paper piecing. It's a nice geometric shape, it's nice and regular. This one is 1.5" hexagon. You can obviously do it in any size you like. So if you're drawing out your hexagons either by hand or using a computer or a graphics program, you can choose what size you want. There's no hard and fast rule as to what size you use. And then we have my selection of quilting cottons that I'm going to be using, and I've got needle and thread and my fabric scissors. I do also have a pair of little embroidery scissors as well for cutting my threads off, but obviously that's not as essential. So let's move some of these bits and pieces out of the way, and we'll have a look. We'll go with one of the stronger coloured pieces of fabrics to demonstrate with for now, so that you can see it a bit better. So let's move some of these out of the way. So just going to make sure that the fabric is wide enough. Okay, you want the fabric to be wider than your shape. So we'll start with this one. Not quite sure why that bit of paper is still there. Move that out of the way. Okay, so here's my fabric, here's my shape. My fabric is wider than my shape, so I'm going to need to cut out the fabric around the shape, but as I say, you do want it to be wider than the shape so that you've got space to seam around. So just going to cut roughly around it, but leaving bit of an allowance on each side. You are going to end up with some little unusable bits and pieces once you've cut everything out, but a lot less than you would have if you weren't using some of them up in your paper piecing project. To move that out of the way, and there we have our paper template with our fabric. So next thing we need is a length of thread on our needle. Obviously don't go ridiculous with your length of thread, you want to be able to manage it. I'm probably going to double mine over, so I'll just make sure I've got a reasonable amount. If you're not sure what colour thread to use, you want to use something that's going to blend in with all your fabrics. So if you're using scraps and lots of different colours, creams and greys are always good because they will blend in with most fabrics. And the only reason for that is just in case you have a rogue stitch that ends up showing on the front. Okay, threading needle on camera. Not the easiest, but hey, we have success. Okay, so I'm going to double my threads up and just tie a knot at the end. And you probably don't necessarily need the knot. You can probably secure the thread end in place with stitches, but just to be on the safe side, I like to put a little knot in the end. And obviously you'd ideally want to be pressing your fabrics to get any stubborn creases out, but it doesn't matter too much if you miss some. So we're going to put the template inside the fabric, so on the wrong side of the fabric. We're going to fold over the edge against the line of the paper, and we're going to fold over the next edge. So this first bit can be a little fiddly, so I'm just going to grab some clips. This is an optional thing that you can include. It's one of these little clips just to hold your fabric in place. You want to make sure your fabric is firmly up against the paper because that's going to give you crisp edges to your shape. Yeah. Adam. Come on, out the way. Yes. Good girl. Sit down. Okay, so once you've folded over your edges and got the cat out of the way, you want to put a few tacking stitches in the corner where the fabrics are crossed over, and hopefully you can hear me over the purring. Kiki, that's not helpful. No, not the thread. Come on. Don't want to have to kick you out the room, sweetie. Okay, so I'm just going to put a few tacking stitches across the fold of the fabric. We're not going through the paper at all. This is why I don't like the idea of glue basting. If you've got the fancy templates that have coating on that you can easily get glue off, by all means, if you want to glue baste, that's fine. I don't, I just use printer paper, so the glue will stick to the paper, then you damage the paper, you can't then use that template again, you've got to print more off, and it seems a little wasteful to me. Okay, so we're going to fold the next side down, again clip it in place, and again we're just going to put a few stitches okay, so we're going to fold the next side down, again keeping it close to the edge of the paper. I'm just going to use my clip because I've only got two hands, it's a bit helpful to have an extra grip there. And again, I haven't cut my thread, I'm just going to carry it over. I'm just going to baste down through the next fold. So 2 or 3 stitches should be enough. Okay, that's my first one done. And we have 1 hexie. So I'm going to make another 1 or 2 of those, and then I'll show you how we put them together. Okay, so now I've got 4 hexies all ready to be seamed together. Typically I would get a whole bunch of shapes done first before seaming them, because then you can play around with how you want them laid out, how you want them arranged for your final project. But piecing them together is quite simple, so I'll connect these ones together, and that'll give you a bit of an idea. You can see how they all tile together nicely because they're all the same shape from the same size template. So that's what you're looking for English paper piecing, which is why the hexies and the clamshells don't automatically work together. Okay, so I'm going to start with this green one and this brown one. So we're going to put them right sides together, matching up the corners as best we can. There may be slight discrepancies because of how you folded the fabric, but essentially they're going to match. And I'm just going to start my thread off. I've got a knot in the end of my thread here, but again, you can do a starting knot stitch and actually knot your thread to begin with. So to do that, you would just stitch over the same space 2 or 3 times, and we're just going to catch the edge of the fabric. We're trying not to catch the paper, and most of the time that's not going to be an issue, but once or twice is not a problem. Okay, so I'm just going to put 2 stitches in the same place there, just for a bit of firmness and stability. As you can see, I've got my thread doubled over again. Again, that's for strength, but it does sometimes mean you get these little tangles. I won't worry too much about it for the purposes of this demonstration. So you're then going to make small stitches through the fold of both bits of fabric all the way along this edge. So again, you're feeling to go through the fabric rather than the paper. You do want your stitches to be fairly close together, and you're going to do that all the way along each seam that you're going to join. so I'll keep doing that and I'll come back to show you what it's like once they're all connected together. And I'll probably speed up this footage. Oh, goodness sake. That's a tangle and a half. Okay, so that's my first two hexes joined together, and you can barely see the stitches between the two. So once that's been pressed, they're going to vanish into it. I've done 3 stitches on top of each other at the end of that seam, as well as the ones on top of each other at the beginning. That's for strength. So now I'm going to put the next hexie on. I've not cut my thread. I'm going to do this one here, and then I'll do the one after it there. So I'm going to start by attaching the butterfly one to the green one. Yes, seams do take a bit of pressure with patchwork, but the pressure on the seams in something like this is going to be shared amongst all of the seams. So if you do need to start a new thread or rejoin one, it's not too much of a problem. Okay, so now we've got this seam to do, so I need to get my thread to this point, and at the moment it's at this point. So I'm going to run it underneath this green, to that corner And as you can see, my backs are not the most elegant, not the most pretty, but when I get to the end and my project is ready for use, I'll take out the basting stitches and take out the papers, so it's not too much of an issue. Okay, my thread is now coming out where I need it to. I'm just going to pull that bit through, if it'll let me. Oh yes, we've got another tangle. This thread really wants to tangle all the time. Doesn't normally. It's coach thread. It's normally pretty good for me. Must be because I'm on camera. Okay, so we are now going to fold this butterfly bit so that the seam is lined up with the brown, and we can fold this green one in half to keep it out of the way. Okay, so there's my 4 hexes joined together, and you would just continue to build your project from there. You want to leave the paper pieces in until at least that hexie is surrounded on all sides. The longer you can leave the paper pieces in, the better. They give structure to the project as you're manipulating it and stop things sort of stretching out of shape whilst you're working on the project. So particularly on larger projects, the more templates you can get hold of, the better, so that you can keep things together until the end of the project. The last cozy house, she's got a big single bed sized quilt that she's working on, and she's left the paper pieces in right to the end because of the weight of the project is going to pull on those seams. So leaving the paper pieces in until you're ready to quilt is going to help with the structure of it. But for something small, you can probably get away with taking pieces out as they're surrounded, but then again, you're more likely to have enough templates to do something small. Play it by ear, but yeah, the longer you can leave the papers in, the better. Okay, so that's my little sample hexes put together. As you can see, hexes are very good for creating flowers. If I'd have done this one green and then did more green around here, it would look like a little flower with a butterfly in the middle. So hexes are good for those sorts of designs. But yeah, that's English paper piecing. So say, let me know down in the comments below whether you want to see me do a scrap project in hexes or in the clamshells. I'm thinking that the finished fabric is going to end up being a project bag of some description. Obviously it depends on how many hexes I get or clamshells I get and how much fabric I end up making, because that's what you do with patchwork, you're making a larger fabric as to what the end project is going to end up being. But at the moment I'm thinking project bags, using English paper piecing to create the fabric for them. But you could make quilts out of English paper piecing, you can do cushion covers, you can do wall hangings, you can use them to make appliques to put on tote bags. Please excuse the cat in the last time, she's viciously caught one of her toys. Yes, good girl. So she always lets us know. Yes, well done. You brought it to me. Thank you. So yeah, so you can use English paper piecing to do all sorts of things. There are some very good shopping tote bags that you can get, like canvas bags, and then just apply applique to it. That can look really, really cool. You can use it as flower heads if you're using the smaller shapes. So yeah, there's loads of things out there. A quick sort of search on something like Pinterest is going to come up with loads of ideas. So yeah, so that's that. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. I aim to put a video out every weekend. It's usually on a Saturday. Once a month is a roundup of the things that I've been making in the previous month. So at some point in the future, there will be inclusion of that English paper piecing scrap project in one of those videos. But scrap projects do tend to be long-term projects, so it won't be anytime soon. I wouldn't have thought, so don't hold your breath. It'll happen, and I will update you with progress in the months that I'm working on them. In between those monthly roundup videos, it does tend to be more videos like this one, so based on a technique or a project, so how I do things or tutorials, that kind of thing. So if you've enjoyed spending some time in my company, like and subscribe down below like all the YouTubers tell you, and do the thing with the bell that they talk about. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week. But in the meantime, happy crafting and bye-bye for now.